Hello, gals on different platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Welcome to the weekly Helix of Success conversation. Hi, Roelof.
Hello, good afternoon, Anna.
Good morning. No, it's even afternoon for me. That's first time, I think, that we start in the same kind of part of the day for both of us. So, Roelof, today we're going to talk about your neighborhood, huh? And what it brought to the history of humanity, in a way.
Well, history of humanity. Maybe it's not as spectacular as that, but certainly part of the history of Europe. Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
So we're going to talk about the liminal thinking, right? And limus, and yeah, the part of the frontier of the Roman Empire, right?
That's right.
And it's a super new topic for me, new term. So you feel free to educate me and our audience about what are we talking about and what is that place and why should we talk about it on the Helix of Success discussion.
Yeah. Okay. So what is Limus? Limus was the frontier road of the Roman Empire in Northern Europe and runs all the way from Switzerland, so along the German border on the side of the Rhine, and bends to the west in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an old road. It was the frontier road, and it's separated from the Roman Empire from whatever was outside of the Roman Empire. And Limus just means frontier. So and it's actually very close to where I live. So there's no road left. It's all gone. But there are places where you know it was there. So there'll be a sign saying the Limus was there.
So wait, this is related to limit, right? I guess then.
Limit, the same word, same
Yeah.
same derivative. That's correct.
See,
Yeah.
that's the kind of da moment for someone, but a light bulb moment for me. Okay, go ahead.
Limit, unlimited, they come from the same word. Yeah, Limus being frontier or the place. So now a guy called David Gray, who's a pretty great thinker, wrote a book on what he called liminal thinking. And the basis of liminal thinking, or the precept of liminal thinking, is getting to the edge. And it's actually, so it's really where that his contention is that a lot of innovation, a lot of new ideas comes when two belief systems start to interact with each other and maybe conflict or create turbulence with each other. And
can I pause you here directly and like by two belief systems, can you give examples of what it could be? Just that we're on the same page of what we're talking about.
well, I mean, there's of course the obvious religious belief systems. So you could have Islam and Christianity, and look to see where the turbulence is there. But it can also be something that's which is today is with the pandemic. It's about the having the belief system of vaccination, and does that help versus vaccination, is that something trying to plant trackers in your body. I mean, that's another point where you have two belief systems. So this is a kind of a good example in the sense that it's something that's very active right now. That there are these two belief systems, there's enormous turbulence going on, with demonstrations in the streets, people saying it's useless, other people saying you absolutely have to do it. So here you're seeing that there's two belief systems that are colliding.
But here you're given two very interesting examples, because to me, religious belief systems, they're not necessarily the opposites, right?
No, and they don't have to
While
be.
the vaccination example is absolutely opposite. You can't be both pro and against vaccine at the same time.
Well, that's interesting.
More or less. Or?
Yeah, more or less, because that is actually also, I agree with you, but I'm also going to say that's actually part of our belief system. Our belief system is that you have to be binary in this. It's either you're for or against. You believe in in science, or or you you believe maybe in the politics or whatever, or you believe that science, or you have different views of what science is. Maybe that's another thing. So it doesn't, it's part of the belief systems is this also often the for or against. But it could be the case that you find that as they interact and collide, that it's maybe not just a for or against. There's a lot of turbulence going on. I mean, it's like two currents. When you're at sea and you see two currents that collide, what's happening? You'll see a lot of turbulence. There's a lot of energy being there. Other currents, I mean, the currents, they're interacting. They might be going head on. They may be crossing diagonally. So there may be aspects where they, you know, they are enforcing each other. Maybe there are aspects where they are, you know, blocking each other. This is all part of that turbulence that's going on, where it's not that clear.
So yeah, what's going on there then? Why are we talking about that? Is it a good thing? Is it something we should avoid?
It's something that so the contention of Gray is that a lot of innovation actually happens when you try to get to this point of turbulence. I mean, another example, another famous one is with Galileo. I'm pretty sure it's Galileo, who placed the sun at the center of the solar system. And up to that point in time, the Earth was considered, you know, God, you know, created man, man ruled the Earth, and the Earth ruled the universe. And so everything had to revolve around the Earth, because if it didn't, that would mean it's not revolving around man. And if it's not revolving around man with his special relationship to God, it's not revolving around God. So that's this whole, so you can see what happened here is that you had this turbulence of beliefs. Now, the interesting thing is that many of us sort of think, okay, so the church in the 17th or 16th century was absolutely wrong, and Galileo was 100% right. But when you actually go back and see what he says, and you put it in the light of current day scientific thinking, it actually turns out that the truth turns out to be a little bit more in the middle, which is really interesting. And that's so the reason was this is because actually the church, if you read the arguments they had, they were not saying you can't expound this belief if you find it useful. It was obviously useful, but you cannot say, that's what the church said, you cannot say this is the truth. And the reason they said that is because we own the truth, which was, you know, pretty wrong anyway. But Galileo was saying, no, this is the truth. This is really what's happening. Now, the interesting thing is, if you look at current, say, scientific philosophy, you can't say that. You cannot say this is the truth. All you can say is that, you know, this is our current view of what's happening here, and, you know, we will test it until something better comes along. You know, so the idea that any particular theory is the truth, as Galileo said, is actually, you know, it's no longer considered to be a correct scientific position. So what you actually can see here is that this turbulence that was between Galileo and the church of two conflicting beliefs actually turned out that the whole concept around what is scientific truth turned out to be, you know, a little less, you know, it evolved, put it that way. So innovation took place partially based on some of these thoughts going on. And this could be the case also if we look at, you know, the situation around the whole vaccination. I don't know. We don't know. It could be just the case that we do end up and say, look, you know, the vaccination scientific group was right and the non-vaccination group was wrong. You know, they were having these theories, conspiracy theories. Or is there something else going on there? Are there there's certainly social and political undercurrents taking place where this is happening. Do they have real value, or do they provide social value that we're just not clear on? I mean, you can also say people are dying because they're not doing it, but are there other things getting involved? this is the turbulence that we can't see. We just see it's really turbulence, but it's really difficult to explore from the point of view from, as we are, both of you and I are I'm pretty sure, we just think, go get vaccinated, no discussion, and we will have the tendency just to put the other group and say, look, we're right and you're wrong. And I mean, I still think it, but part of liminal thinking is trying to have suspension of belief and say, okay, let's just forget about the right and wrong and just go through this exercise. Why are we doing this? What does it deliver us, perhaps as a society? Is it good that you go down? Is it good to have a group that doesn't, that even though it's killing people, is it still is there some greater good involved? None of us do these kind of discussions. We never get that far. We just stop and say, look, go get your vaccination, cut the crap, cut the conspiracy theories, and do that. And we don't try to move past that. So that's where the liminal thinking comes in. It tries to say, okay, look, here's an obvious frontier. There's the Roman side with all its culture and its ideas and its structures, and there's the unknown side on the other side, the limits, which, and it's that there was, although the Romans would have thought people on the other side were uncultured, they were barbarian and something like that. But look, 2,000 years later, and we consider ourselves to be pretty highly cultured, and the Romans maybe even less so. So the truth often lies in the middle, somewhere, bits and pieces of the truth, perhaps.
How can we exercise that in the, for example, entrepreneurial context right now? You give a good example of the vaccination, which is on the mind of many people right now. But if we go into the business environment where our audience is hopefully on the daily as well, so how can we practice asking the right questions or getting into those conflicts in a positive way, in a constructive way?
So this is exactly why do investors find it difficult? I mean, to invest in a really great company. I mean, Amazon was around for 20 years, and everybody could have invested in Amazon, and made it. And if they'd done that 20 years ago, they'd all be multimillionaires now. But it didn't happen. I mean, and now we all say Amazon was a great idea. Its time had come. It made a lot of sense, and yet very few of us invested in Amazon back then. So I want to ask you, why do you think that was the case?
Well, they were too out there, so to say, from the norm. So I would guess there was people just didn't believe that would roll. And you need this critical mass to get the value from Amazon. If it's only one supplier on it, there is no point. Yeah. And I guess people were limited in their thinking of that, everyone will win if more people are joining that as suppliers.
Yeah. So I'm glad you used the word limited there, because you made full circle of this liminal thinking. So people weren't applying liminal thinking. They found the idea, and this is often the case. If really great ideas are actually from where you are, behind your barrier, behind your wall, they actually sound kind of crappy. It misses it. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have that. The market isn't there yet, and so on. And you quickly start confirming why this idea really isn't all that good. And the point of it's actually at that point, in that context, from the viewpoint that you're looking at, it isn't all that good. It's not just you're thinking it really isn't. If you stand, as I said, well behind the wall, it's only when you get onto the border, or maybe even cross the border, that you then start to saying, okay, there are some good things here that I hadn't seen because where I was. So it's only when you step out of deliberately realize that you're within a belief system, and that you realize that's going to be, determining your concepts and your perception, and that you have to let that go, and sort of try to explore other belief systems and leave which is all very difficult to do. That's obvious. It's all extremely difficult to do. But that is what liminal thinking is about. Look for the edge. Look for the turbulence, because it's the turbulence where a lot of innovation takes place. So don't shy away from it and say, look, everything's, there's a lot of discussion about it. It's very, very turbulent. But look for that, to see, well, maybe there are things there that that nobody else is thinking about. Exactly what I'm
so
saying.
basically what you're saying is that what people, when people are trying to innovate, to create new ideas and new solutions, those ideas that stir more emotions and you feel like, what the hell are we talking about right now? This is what you could give you a sign that you are on that edge or you're getting close to it. So climb up on that to explore further, or yeah.
So that's it. So in other words, the reason when you get to the turbulence, it's not a reason to move back into your comfort. Realize it's exactly where the turbulence is where something may be happening. You don't know. That's the point. You don't know. It could be just, it could be just a crappy idea. That's the point. But then again, it may not be. Some of them aren't be. And that's where pretty much all of the great ideas actually do come out of this space. But there's a genuine turbulence. We'll know, because if it wasn't in that space, it would have been done long before. It would have been picked up and worked on. If it was, I've already agreed with that. There's no reason that you would, then that market space is already gone. It's already been, it's already been filled. So it's only when you get into the turbulence that that this might be a new space, new market, new idea, new possibilities. Yeah.
What comes to my mind is one of my interviewees for the Genius Leadership podcast, David Gluckman, who invented Baileys at some point, and then there were a dozen of other brands that, especially in the spirits industry. So yeah, this idea of putting together a liquor or a whiskey and cream or milk, who would think of that? And in his book, This Shit Will Never Sell, he's actually just describing the whole process of how he and his partner at that time thought and how they experimented to get to that idea. And that is, again, those two things. And then another liquor, Sheridan, which is a coffee liquor. And I think quite a lot of people have recognized the bottle, which is two different bottles together, one with the coffee and one with the liquor, or one with liquor, cream liquor, one with coffee liquor. That idea came to him during the trips, where at the airports, he actually noticed that a lot of people were ordering coffee and a shot. So for him, it was like, okay, why don't we put those two together into one idea? So that's the thing. Playing around with combining things that at some point might feel ridiculous to combine. But then once you have played around with that idea long enough, it actually just feels so obvious. I just discussed it yesterday with my husband about Netflix and Spotify, how obvious those things seem right now. They're just like, why did people come up with that before? With the whole model, how they operate and then how they share content and get people hooked on their platforms. But yeah, at that moment it was challenging, and then thinking about getting all the licenses and enough content providers and content creators on the platform to actually make it valuable for the customer. It wasn't that obvious then.
It wasn't obvious, and it wasn't that well put together, because you had, the internet was much weaker, was much less well defined, was much more expensive. You had a much lower bandwidth. So if you had Netflix at the start or that, I think it was pretty crappy. It wasn't what it was today. So the same story here. It's that it was, so was it a good idea? Not in the context of the internet then and what we have, but certainly in today's. So again, here, somebody was able to look out into the future and see where things were going, and could get past the turbulence and see to do that. Yeah.
All right. Any more ideas on how to support the teams for a leader to go on that edge and to explore the turbulence so that it becomes less scary? Maybe that people find time for it, because who would prioritize the uncomfortable stuff and uncomfortable discussions in daily life?
Yeah, so this actually ties very strongly into, I would say, the frequency or concept of brainstorming. The goal of one of the major goals of brainstorming is to look for this turbulence and to do it in a, and we've often talked about this, doing this in a psychologically safe way. So people, so that there should be a culture or practice of doing this regularly. So when you do a brainstorm session, it's not just something that happens in the brainstorm session. There is a phenomenon that takes place. People, were open. They could discuss things. If it's well done, that will carry out of the meeting, and people will take over some of that behavior also. So it's really about a culture aspect of, as I said, looking for the turbulence, and that should spread that. And the only way to do that is through. It's a question of behavior, of repetitive practice. So if somebody wants to do this, of course, a leader should be continually expressing this, showing that he's looking for the, appreciating when people are looking for the turbulence, and then giving them the space to do that, and maybe enforcing that with brainstorm type sessions, particularly the ones where, again, you get the ability to feel comfortable to go to the edge, to get out of your comfort zone and go into that uncomfortable zone where it's very turbulent.
I would like to ask you here, listening to us, some people could interpret it like, okay, we should seek conflicts within the team in a way, not between ideas necessarily, but maybe between the people and their ideas. Maybe that would not be the interpretation of what we're talking about, but I have experienced the companies where that was the way of being creative all the time, exploring the status quo or challenging it and so on. And there people went into opposing each other instead of working together to explore ideas and blend ideas to find some creative solutions. So how would you address that, Roelof?
Well, first off, it's not about conflicts between people. That's not what you're trying to do. It's conflicts between ideas.
Yeah.
And so step one is that you need to divorce the idea from the person. So it's not my idea, it's a idea which I brought forth. And the ways of doing that, I think we've also discussed this once, is that you could actually let the advocacy, you bring an idea, and instead of somebody else opposing that idea, somebody else has to, pitch the idea, and you oppose your own idea. So whatever techniques you do, is to make sure you get them up on a piece of paper, make sure that there's no subtle hierarchies going on where the boss is, dominating the process, that people all get the chance to say. And I would say this almost as quote unquote standard techniques that you should follow. And, make sure the ideas get up, that they get divorced from the person who made the idea. That's probably the most important thing. So whether the idea is good or not does not reflect particularly on the person who brought up the idea, but it's just the idea itself is discussed. And then I think the conflict part disappears, because the conflict between persons, I think, really comes when the idea becomes my idea, and part of my identity is coupled to the idea. So if you attack the idea, then you are somehow also attacking me. And I think if you get into that situation, then you have a problem.
Yeah, and I just want to bring it up because you can start playing and then get excited by the play, and then you kind of turn the game into something else. It just easily happens, especially if the culture is not completely healthy within the company, or some people are just having just low self-esteem, and those issues are they disappear because of these personal challenges.
So let me ask you, now that we've gone through an explanation of what this liminal thinking is, can you look back and say, oh, well, I think at this point, at this particular situation, I was doing liminal thinking?
It's hard to come up with an example like this just directly. I feel like I'm doing it on a daily in a way that I question my beliefs in general. And what came to me, for example, when you asked about, or you gave the example of the vaccination, was that I always look at where is the truth in their position, in that opposite camp, so to say, to me. And what we discussed some weeks ago, it's really not helping to just say you're stupid or anything. They come from the same motivations as I. It's just that our conclusions come to and diametrically opposite solutions, right? For me, my passions and my way of contributing and so on translates into going and vaccinating myself without being questioned. And to those people, it is about opposing the whole process, but it comes from the same motivation. So for me, this is just a natural process, I would say, to explore why am I not agreeing with this person? What could be truth in their eyes or from their experience that I haven't experienced myself and that I don't see it? And that way, that's my approach to life. And sometimes I was annoyed by that because I'm always this kind of it depends kind of person. When someone is asking me something and I just can't say it, and I say, why does it have to be either or? I see both being valuable and valid depending on the situation, and I don't have enough information to tell you either or. Give me more. So it's not a concrete example, I would say, but it's more my way of thinking about the liminal thinking and how I'm applying it.
Okay, so there's two things here. So just one is there's where you're on the search for truth, which is and it's very good. As you mentioned to question not only your beliefs but to question my beliefs. And liminal thinking, in that sense, is more functionally oriented. It's really not so much about questioning your own beliefs as suspending them, and you're doing it not so much to maybe to look for the truth as to look for innovation, new ideas, and so that's the role of liminal thinking, is to get you in that space that you may see new things. So you could say, well, that's maybe looking for the truth in a new sense, but the role is a little different than just looking for what's the truth, what you say, what I say, but it's here just the actual turbulence itself creates dynamics that may create new ideas for you, someone else.
Yeah. What came to my mind right now, a primitive in a way example, is when I was working for an automotive company and we were developing a car, and the different teams of engineers would disagree with each other while we're sitting in the meeting table and having presentations, and some solution or some change would affect the other team and they would oppose to that, and there would be a clash there. So that's the turbulence. What my solution there was sometimes is trying to get the test car and put those people in the car together so they actually interact and see how that system holistically experience is, so that they can start thinking about their function as the part of the whole and discuss on that way. And quite often people would be like, oh, okay, but that's what you meant about this transition or this new state and so on and so forth. And people would get better understanding of each other, and then we could go back to the meeting table and discuss that solution with a more holistic perspective. But that was about like locking them in an even smaller space of a car instead of a bigger meeting room, and getting them to discuss that stuff together and showing each other what they mean in a real case environment, so to say.
So that's actually a great example of a liminal thinking, or a liminal action, even.
Acting, yeah.
Yeah, because as you said, you bring them together. They are forced to sit on the boundary and discuss the boundary with each other. And in discussing that, new things or new perspectives can come up that neither side had got. So so that's definitely liminal action, liminal thinking in practice. Yeah.
I see that Daniel commented here that questioning norms, value systems, and beliefs is a vital part of that. So there was an agreement here. Norms. It's a difficult. It's a separate conversation, I would say, in general. The norms, where they come from, and how can we question them? How can we do that? But we touched on that a couple of times in the Helix of Success conversations, I would say.
Yeah.
And then there was another comment here, which I think we touched upon as well from Daniel. Creativity is the fuel and the engine of both culture and entrepreneurship. And that's what we discussed, that, of course, entrepreneurship, startups, companies, creative or innovative companies have to be creative, right, to survive, to bring some product to the market, but also for the culture.
Yeah, and turbulence may be the fuel of creativity.
So it goes one step further. Creativity is fueled by turbulence, and then culture and entrepreneurship are fueled by the creativity.
Yeah,
thanks for the comments, Daniel. They're adding good points.
Yeah.
All right, Roelof. Some organizational parts. You are on vacation, lucky you, for the next 3 weeks, and we're taking the time off with the lives. We'll just keep working on the Helix of Success on the backstage, but just because we don't want to compromise with your schedule of tours and trips and family time, there won't be any live streams for the following 3 Mondays, correct?
That's correct. So the next one will be the first Monday in November, I'm guessing.
Yes, and then we'll actually bring a very interesting series of conversations that we are working on right now about the maturity of organizations and different challenges on each stage and how you can work proactively on those and really work your way to the sustainable success that we're talking about. Yes. And then the other point is about joining our group. Please feel free to do so on LinkedIn, the Helix of Success group, where we are building a huge library of posts that will be thought-provoking, that will give you some inspiration for your creativity, that will challenge your beliefs as well, so that you can sit on that edge and explore, like, what is uncomfortable here, and where is the truth, or where is some new idea here that I could be missing sitting on the other side of the fence. So join the group. The link is in the description to this video, and let's continue the conversation then during October.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and see you in November.
Okay. Take care.